My daughter-in-law convinced my son to sell my farm while I was dying in the hospital. Neither knew I own her parents' mortgage. I spent 40 years building something beautiful. She destroyed it in 2 weeks. But what she didn't know would change everything. I'm writing this from my farmhouse, the same one my father built in 1952, and the same one I almost lost 2 months ago. I'm 68 years old, and I've learned that sometimes the people you think you know best are the ones most capable of betraying you. This is a story of how my daughter-in-law tried to steal my legacy, how my son let her, and how a piece of information neither of them knew about turned everything on its head. I need to start at the beginning to make sense of all this. My name is Robert. I've lived on this farm in rural Nebraska my whole life. My father bought 200 acres in 1952, built this house with his own hands, and spent his life working this land. When he passed in 1989, he left it all to me. I've spent the last 34 years maintaining it, improving it, making it profitable. I grow corn and soybeans, rotate my crops properly, take care of the land. It's not just property to me. It's my heritage, my identity, my life's work. I have one son, Tyler. He's 42 now. I raised him on this farm after his mother died when he was 8. It was just the two of us for a long time. I taught him everything I know, how to drive a tractor, how to read the weather, how to respect the land. He worked alongside me every summer through high school. I thought he loved this place the way I do. But Tyler never wanted to be a farmer. He went to college in Omaha, got a degree in business management, and took a job at an insurance company. He met his wife, Bridget, there. They got married 6 years ago. I'll be honest, I never warmed to Bridget. There was something about her that felt calculating. She was always pleasant to my face, always smiled and said the right things, but it felt performative, like she was playing the role of dutiful daughter-in-law, without actually feeling it. Bridget came from money, or at least her family acted like they did. Her parents, Doug and Linda, lived in a McMansion in a fancy subdivision outside Omaha. New cars, country club membership, expensive vacations. They looked down on the farm, I could tell. Doug made comments about simple living and rural lifestyles with his condescending tone. Linda would wrinkle her nose at the smell of manure and refuse to come inside the farmhouse, claiming allergies. Bridget had the same attitude. She'd visit maybe twice a year, always complaining about the drive, the lack of self-service, the dated farmhouse. She'd make pointed comments about how much the land must be worth, how developers were buying up farms in the area, how Tyler could do so much better than waiting to inherit a farm he didn't even want. That last part stung, because it was true. Tyler had made it clear over the years that he didn't want to take over a farm. He liked his city life, his office job, his suburban house. I'd accepted it, mostly. I'd been planning to the farm to Tyler anyway, with the understanding that he'd sell it after I died and use the money for his future. The land was worth about $2.5 million. Good Nebraska farmland always is. I'd made peace with the idea that after 4 generations, our farm would be sold off. But I wasn't ready to die yet. I had plans. I'd hoped to work this land for another 10, maybe 15 years. I'd hoped to find someone local who might want to buy it and keep farming it. I'd hoped to have more time. Then, 7 weeks ago, I had a heart attack. It was a bad one. I was out checking the irrigation system when I felt this crushing pain in my chest. I managed to call 911 before I collapsed. The paramedics told me later that I was lucky. Another 10 minutes and I wouldn't have made it. I woke up in the ICU in Omaha. Tyler was there and Bridget. The doctors told me I'd need emergency bypass surgery. They said the next 48 hours were critical. They used words like touch and go and prepare for the worst. I was scared. For the first time in my life, I was genuinely afraid I was going to die. Tyler was crying. My strong, successful son was sitting next to my hospital bed crying, holding my hand, telling me I was going to be okay. Bridget stood behind him, her hand on his shoulder, her face arranged in an expression of concern. "Don't worry about anything, Dad," Tyler said. "Just focus on getting better. We'll take care of everything." I didn't think much of it at the time. I thought he meant they'd take care of practical things, contacting people, managing my affairs while I was hospitalized. I signed a temporary power of attorney so Tyler could handle my bills and make medical decisions if I became incapacitated. It seemed like the responsible thing to do. The surgery was successful, but the recovery was rough. I spent 2 weeks in the ICU, drifting in and out of consciousness, hooked up to machines. Another week in a regular hospital room. Tyler and Bridget visited every few days. Tyler seemed stressed, distracted. Bridget was always on her phone. During the 3rd week, Tyler came to visit alone. He looked nervous, kept fidgeting with his hands. "Dad, I need to talk to you about something," he said. "What is it?" "It's about the farm. While we thought you might not make it, Bridget and I started thinking about what would happen to the property. And we got approached by a development company. They want to buy the land." My heart rate monitors started beeping faster. "What?" "It's a good offer, Dad. Really good. $2.8 million. That's more than market value. They want to build a subdivision." "No," I said immediately. "Absolutely not." "Dad, just listen." I said no, Tyler. I'm not selling the farm. I'm not dead yet. I know. But, Dad, you're not going to be able to work the land anymore. The doctor said you need to avoid physical stress. You're looking at months of recovery, maybe longer. And even after that, you can't do the kind of work you've been doing. You're 68 years old, and you just had a major heart attack. He was right, of course. But that didn't mean I wanted to sell. I'll hire help. I'll lease the land to another farmer. There are options. That doesn't make financial sense. The development company's offer is incredible. We never get that much from a regular sale. And think about what you could do with that money. You could buy a nice condo in Omaha, be closer to me and Bridget, not have to worry about maintaining that big property. That property is my home, Tyler. It's been in our family for 70 years. I know, and I'm not trying to be insensitive. I'm trying to be practical. You nearly died, Dad. You need to think about your quality of life, not about hanging on to property you can't work anymore. We argued about it until a nurse came in and said I needed a rest, that I was getting too agitated. Tyler left looking frustrated. Over the next few days, Tyler kept bringing it up. Each visit, he had a new argument for why selling was the right choice. Bridget started coming with him again, and she'd chime in with her own thoughts. How I deserved to retire comfortably. How dangerous it was for me to be alone on the farm. How I could use the money to travel, to enjoy my remaining years. I kept saying no, but I was weak, tired, medicated, and some of what they said was getting to me. Maybe I couldn't work the farm anymore. Maybe holding on to it was foolish pride. Maybe Tyler was right that I should think practically. At least meet with a development company. Bridget urged. Just hear them out. What could it hurt? I don't want developers tearing up my land to build houses. Dad, Tyler said gently, it's not really about what you want anymore. It's about what's realistic. I know you love that farm, but love doesn't pay for medical bills or long-term care if you need it. That struck a nerve. The medical bills were already astronomical. My insurance was covering most of it, but not all. And I didn't know what other health issues might be coming. Just think about it, Tyler said. That's all we're asking. Just think about it. I said I would. I was so tired, so overwhelmed, so focused on just surviving that I didn't have the energy to fight them anymore. I was in the hospital for 4 weeks total. During week 4, I was finally well enough to start thinking clearly again. The fog of pain medication was lifting. I was starting to feel like myself. And I realized I hadn't heard anything about the farm in several days. Tyler hadn't brought it up during his last few visits. That should have reassured me, but instead it made me uneasy. When Tyler avoids a topic, it usually means he's doing something he doesn't want to tell me about. On day 27, my neighbor Chuck came to visit. Chuck farms a property adjacent to mine. We've been friends for 40 years. He walked into my hospital room looking angry. "Robert, what the hell is going on with your farm?" "What do you mean?" "There are surveyors on your property. People in suits walking around with clipboards." I asked them what they were doing, and they said they were doing preliminary work for the new subdivision. My blood ran cold. What? You didn't know? Robert, there's a sold sign at the end of your driveway. I ripped off my blankets and tried to get out of bed. Chuck had to physically stop me. Hold on, hold on. You just had heart surgery. You can't go anywhere. My son sold my farm, I said, and hearing the words out loud made it real. He sold my farm while I was in the hospital. Chuck looked horrified. He can't do that. You didn't sign anything, did you? I signed a power of attorney for medical decisions and paying bills, not for selling property. Then he can't legally sell it. Unless he forged my signature, I said, feeling sick. Chuck called his lawyer right there from my hospital room. The lawyer said if Tyler had used a power of attorney to sell property without my explicit consent, it was fraud. But we'd need to move fast. If the sale went through and was finalized, it would be much harder to reverse. I called Tyler. He didn't answer. I called 3 more times. Finally, Bridget picked up Tyler's phone. Robert, how are you feeling? Where's Tyler? He's in a meeting. Can I help you with something? Did he sell my farm? Silence. Then, we were going to tell you. We were waiting until you were stronger. You sold my farm without my permission. We had your power of attorney. And Robert, you need to understand we did this for you. The offer was only good for 2 weeks. If we'd waited, you would have lost out on $2.8 million. We were protecting your interests. You were protecting your interests. That farm isn't yours to sell. Actually, Robert, it kind of is. You're not competent to make these decisions right now. You're on medication. You're not thinking clearly, and Tyler is your next of kin. He has every right to make choices on your behalf. I was shaking with rage. Put Tyler on the phone. Now. He's busy. I'll have him call you later. She hung up. I called my own lawyer, Martin, who I've used for 30 years. Told him everything. He said to stay calm, that we figure this out. He started making calls. By that evening, Martin had the full story. Tyler had used the power of attorney to execute a sale contract with the development company. He'd signed my name using the POA as authorization. The sale was scheduled to close in 3 days. Can we stop it? I asked. We can try. We'll file an emergency injunction, argue that the POA was being used fraudulently, that you never intended to give Tyler authority to sell property. But Robert, there's a complication. What? Tyler is arguing that you're mentally incompetent due to the medications and the trauma of the heart attack. He's got a doctor's statement saying you're not in a position to make sound decisions. He's claiming he sold the farm because you were dying and he needed to protect the asset. I'm not dying. I know that. But he's building a case that you were and that he had to act in your best interest. I wanted to scream. My own son was arguing I was mentally incompetent, so he could steal my farm. Martin filed the injunction that night. The next morning, Tyler finally showed up at the hospital. Bridget was with him. Dad, I heard you talk to a lawyer. That's really not necessary. We can work this out. You sold my farm without my permission. I used the authority you gave me to make a sound financial decision while you were incapacitated. I wasn't incapacitated. I was recovering. The doctor said you might not survive. Someone had to think about your affairs. So you stole my property? My legacy? Tyler's face hardened. It's not stealing if it's going to be mine anyway. You've always said you were leaving me the farm. I just accelerated the timeline. Because you wanted the money now. Because Bridget and I have expenses. We have a mortgage, car payments, student loans. We've been waiting for years for our inheritance. You're 68, Dad. You could live another 20 years. We can't wait that long. There it was. The truth. My son was so desperate for money that he was willing to sell my farm out from under me while I was in the hospital. You'll get nothing, I said coldly. I'm contesting the sale, and I'm changing my will. You'll never see a penny of my estate. Bridget stepped forward. Robert, let's not be hasty. We're family. We can work this out. Tyler just wanted to make sure you were taken care of. Get out, I said. Both of you. Get out of my room and don't come back. Tyler looked like he wanted to argue, but Bridget pulled him away. As they left, I heard her hiss at him. I told you we should have waited until he died. The legal battle started immediately. The development company, realizing there was a dispute, pulled out of the deal temporarily. They weren't going to finalize a sale that might be fraudulent. That gave us time. Martin worked fast. We got the injunction approved. The sale was frozen pending a competency hearing. Tyler and Bridget hired their own lawyer and prepared to fight me in court, arguing that the sale was legitimate and that I was too unwell to make rational decisions. I was released from the hospital. During all this, I went home to my farm, which still had a sold sign at the end of the driveway. I tore it down immediately. Chuck and some other neighbors rallied around me. They brought me food, help with basic chores I couldn't do yet, made sure I was following my doctor's orders. The local community was outraged by what Tyler had done. In rural areas, family land means something. What Tyler had done wasn't just legally questionable. It was morally reprehensible. The competency hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks after I got home. Martin was confident we'd win. I was clearly lucid, capable of making decisions, recovering well from the surgery. Tyler's case was weak, but Bridget wasn't done yet. 3 days before the hearing, I got a call from Martin. "Robert, we have a problem. Bridget's parents have filed a motion to join Tyler's side of the case. They're claiming you owe them money and that the farm sale is necessary to settle your debts." "What? I don't owe them anything." "They're claiming you borrowed $150,000 from them 5 years ago and never paid it back. They've got a promissory note with your signature." "That's impossible. I've never borrowed money from Doug and Linda. I wouldn't take a dime from those people." "Is it possible you signed something without reading it carefully? Maybe at a family gathering." I thought back. 5 years ago. That would have been right after Tyler and Bridget got married. There was a family dinner. Doug had asked me to sign some papers. He said it was something about life insurance, that they were updating their policies and needed family signatures for some reason. I'd been drinking, celebrating my son's marriage. I signed without reading carefully. "Oh, God," I said. "He got me to sign a promissory note." "We'll fight it. It's obviously fraudulent. But, Robert, it complicates things. Even if we prove you didn't actually borrow the money, we now have to fight on 2 fronts. I spent that night going through my files. I keep meticulous records of everything. If I'd actually borrowed $150,000, there would be evidence, bank deposits, tax implications, something. There was nothing, but I found something else. Something I'd completely forgotten about. 8 years ago, Doug and Linda had hit financial trouble. Doug had made some bad investments. They were facing foreclosure on their McMansion. It was right before Tyler started dating Bridget seriously, and Doug had approached me for help. He was embarrassed, desperate, trying to keep his financial troubles quiet. He'd asked me for a loan. I'd said no. I didn't have that kind of cash lying around. But he'd asked if I could help him refinance his mortgage. He said banks wouldn't work with him because his credit was shot. I'd gone to my bank and worked out an arrangement. The bank would refinance Doug's mortgage, and I would be the guarantor. Essentially, if Doug defaulted, I'd be responsible for the debt. In exchange for me taking on that risk, Doug agreed to pay me 2% of the mortgage payment each month as a fee. It wasn't much money, but it helped him get the refinancing he needed. But here's the thing. The way the paperwork was structured, I was listed as a co-mortgagee. Legally, I was on the mortgage with Doug. In fact, because I was a guarantor and the one with the actual creditworthiness, I was a primary mortgagee. Doug was essentially making payments to me, and I was responsible for ensuring the bank got paid. Over 8 years, Doug had been making payments. They went into an account I'd set up specifically for this purpose, and then transferred automatically to the bank. I'd forgotten about the whole arrangement. It was automated, and I never thought about it. But that meant I effectively owned Doug and Linda's mortgage. If they defaulted, I could foreclose. And I had all the paperwork to prove it. I sat there looking at these documents, and an idea started forming. A terrible, vindictive, absolutely justified idea. I called Martin. "I need you to add something to our case." The competency hearing arrived. I walked into that courthouse with Martin, my medical records showing I was recovering well and fully capable of making decisions, ready to fight. Tyler and Bridget were there with their lawyer. Doug and Linda were there too, dressed in expensive suits they probably couldn't afford, ready to testify about the money I supposedly owed them. The hearing started. Tyler's lawyer argued that I'd been incapacitated, that Tyler had acted in my best interest, that the farm sale was sound financial planning. Martin tore their arguments apart. He presented evidence that I'd been explicitly against selling the farm, that I'd never given Tyler permission, that the power of attorney was for medical and financial management, not for selling assets. He had testimony from my doctors that while I'd been seriously ill, I'd never been mentally incompetent. Then Doug was called to testify about the supposed loan. He took the stand and told a story about how I'd asked him for $150,000 5 years ago, claiming I needed it for farm equipment. He said he'd given me the money out of family loyalty, and I'd signed a promissory note agreeing to pay him back with 5% interest. He said I had never made a single payment, and that I now owed him over $190,000 with interest. It was a good story. He delivered it confidently. Bridget nodded along from her seat, playing the part of concerned daughter-in-law caught in the middle. When Martin stood up to cross-examine, I saw Doug's confident expression falter slightly. "Mr. Hanson," Martin said, "you claim Mr. Patterson borrowed $150,000 from you 8 years ago. Do you have any record of withdrawing that amount of money from your accounts?" "It was a cash transaction." "You had $150,000 in cash?" "I've been saving it." "Can you show U.S. bank records of the savings?" "Surely withdrawing $150,000 in cash would be documented." "I kept it at home. I don't trust banks." "You kept $150,000 in cash at your home, but you do trust banks enough to have a mortgage with First National Bank of Omaha, correct?" Doug hesitated. "Yes. And that mortgage, according to public records, is $720,000 for a house you purchased 10 years ago for $850,000. Does that sound right?" "I suppose." "So you had a $720,000 mortgage 8 years ago, but you also had $150,000 in cash that you kept at home?" "Yes." "Interesting, because according to the credit report we've obtained, with your permission as part of discovery in this case, 8 years ago you were actually in significant financial trouble. You'd maxed out several credit cards, you defaulted on a car loan, and you were 3 months behind on your mortgage payments. Is that correct?" Doug's face went red. "I had some temporary cash flow issues." "Temporary issues that required you to seek refinancing on your mortgage. In fact, you sought that refinancing from Mr. Patterson, didn't you?" "I don't recall. Let me refresh your memory." Martin approached the bench with a stack of documents. "These are the mortgage refinancing documents from 8 years ago. They show that Mr. Patterson acted as guarantor on your mortgage and is listed as the primary mortgagee. You've been making payments not directly to the bank, but through Mr. Patterson's escrow account. Isn't that correct?" Doug's lawyer stood up. "Objection, relevance." "Your Honor," Martin said, "Mr. Hanson has claimed that Mr. Patterson owes him $190,000. I'm establishing that not only is that claim false, but that in fact Mr. Hanson owes Mr. Patterson a significant amount of money." The judge allowed it. Martin continued, "Mr. Hanson, according to these documents, you've been making payments on your mortgage for 8 years. But according to our analysis, you've missed several payments in the last 2 years. In fact, you're currently 4 months behind. Is that correct?" Doug didn't answer. "Mr. Hanson, we've had some financial difficulties." "Financial difficulties that total approximately $18,000 in missed payments plus late fees. And because Mr. Patterson is the primary mortgagee, you technically owe that money to him, not to the bank. Isn't that right?" "That's a separate issue." "Is it? Because it seems relevant that you're claiming Mr. Patterson owes you money when in fact you owe him money. It seems relevant that you're supporting your daughter's attempt to force the sale of Mr. Patterson's farm when you're in debt to him. And it seems very relevant that the supposed promissory note for $150,000 appeared right around the time you needed to support your daughter's legal case." The courtroom was silent. Martin held up another document. "This is a forensic analysis of the promissory note you provided. The expert concluded that while the signature appears to be Mr. Patterson's, the document itself was created recently. The paper is dated to within the last year, not 5 years ago. The printing is from a laser printer model that didn't exist 5 years ago. In short, Mr. Hanson, you fabricated this promissory note to support your daughter's case and to try to force Mr. Patterson to sell his farm, so your daughter could inherit money that could, in turn, help you with your own financial problems. Doug's face was pale now. No further questions, Martin said. The hearing continued, but the outcome was already clear. Tyler's case fell apart completely. The judge ruled that the power of attorney had been used fraudulently, that I was fully competent, and that the sale of the farm was null and void. He also ordered Doug to pay my legal fees and referred the case to the prosecutor's office for investigation of fraud. But Martin wasn't done. When the ruling was complete, he stood up again. Your Honor, my client would like to make a statement regarding the mortgage. The judge nodded. I stood up, looked directly at Doug and Linda, and said, I'm calling in the full amount of your mortgage. You have 30 days to pay the $720,000 you owe, plus the $18,000 in missed payments, plus late fees. If you don't, I'll foreclose on your house. Linda gasped. Doug looked like he might have a heart attack himself. You can't do that. Bridget shouted. Actually, I can, I said calmly. It's all in the mortgage documents. I have the right to call the full amount due if payments are missed. Your parents have missed 4 payments. The terms are clear. Dad, Tyler said, standing up. Please, let's talk about this. No, I said. You tried to steal my farm while I was in the hospital. Your wife's parents fabricated evidence against me. You all thought you could take advantage of an old man who was too sick to fight back. You were wrong. I walked out of that courthouse with Martin. Over the next 30 days, Doug and Linda scrambled to find the money to pay off their mortgage. They couldn't. They tried to refinance with other banks, but their credit was destroyed. They tried to sell the house, but they owed more than it was worth after years of using it as an ATM. On day 31, I filed foreclosure papers. Bridget called me, crying, begging me not to do it. She said her parents would be homeless. She said they were elderly and couldn't handle the stress. She said I was being cruel and vindictive. Your parents tried to defraud me. I said, your husband tried to steal my farm. You orchestrated all of it, and you thought there would be no consequences. Please, she sobbed. I'll do anything. We'll drop everything. We'll apologize. Please don't take their house. Where was your mercy when I was lying in a hospital bed and you were selling my farm? Where was your compassion when your parents were forging documents? You wanted to play hardball, Bridget. This is what hardball looks like. I foreclosed on the house. Doug and Linda moved into a small apartment. Their McMansion was sold at auction. After paying off the bank and the various fees, there was actually about $45,000 left over. I sent them a check for that amount. I'm not a monster. I just wanted them to understand they couldn't steal from me. As for Tyler and Bridget, I did exactly what I promised. I changed my will. Tyler will inherit nothing when I die. Instead, everything will go to a trust that will preserve the farm for future generations. A local family who's been wanting to expand their operation will have first right of refusal to buy it at a fair price, with the stipulation that it remains a working farm. Tyler and Bridget divorced 6 months later. Turns out that when the money dried up, their marriage didn't have much holding it together. Tyler has reached out a few times, wanting to apologize, wanting to rebuild our relationship. I haven't responded yet. Maybe someday I will. He's still my son. But right now, the betrayal is too fresh. I'm 68 years old. I had a major heart attack. I nearly lost everything I spent my life building. But I survived. The farm survived. And the people who tried to steal it from me learned a very expensive lesson about underestimating old farmers. Chuck comes by most evenings. We sit on the porch, drink coffee, watch the sun set over the cornfields. He asked me once if I regretted how hard I'd been on Doug and Linda, on Tyler and Bridget. I thought about it. Then I said, they thought I was too old, too sick, too weak to fight back. They thought they could take advantage of me in my darkest hour. Every single one of them showed me exactly who they really are. I don't regret responding to that truth. Fair enough, Chuck said. But what about Tyler? He's still your son. He's my son who tried to steal my farm while I was dying. That doesn't just go away because we share DNA. So you'll never forgive him? I was quiet for a long time. Then I said, I don't know, maybe someday. But he has to earn it. He has to prove he's sorry for what he did. Not just sorry he got caught. He has to show me that he understands what he took from me, or tried to take. And I don't know if he's capable of that. It's been 2 months now. My health has improved significantly. I'm not back to full strength. Probably never will be. But I'm doing okay. I've hired a young couple to help manage the farm day to day. They live in the old foreman's cottage on the property. They're good people, hard workers, and they treat the land with respect. The farm is still here, still in my name, still growing crops, still part of our family legacy, even if Tyler won't inherit it. I got a letter from Tyler last week. He didn't try to excuse what he did. He just said he was sorry, that he'd been greedy and stupid, that he let Bridget poison his thinking, that he betrayed me in the worst possible way. He said he understood if I never wanted to speak to him again, but that he wanted me to know he was ashamed of what he'd done. It's the first real apology he's offered, the first one that doesn't have, but attached to it. I haven't responded yet. I'm not sure what to say. Part of me wants to forgive him, to rebuild what we had. He's my only child. I raised him alone. We were close once. But part of me can't forget sitting in that hospital bed, recovering from heart surgery, while my son sold my farm out from under me. Can't forget him arguing in court that I was mentally incompetent, so he could keep the money. Can't forget him prioritizing his financial problems over my legacy. Maybe I'll write him back. Maybe I won't. Right now, I'm just focused on healing, on maintaining this farm, on enjoying whatever time I have left on this land. I'm 68 years old. I had a heart attack. My son betrayed me. My daughter-in-law tried to destroy me. Her parents tried to defraud me. But I'm still here. The farm is still here. And I won. That's enough for now.